You brought up a really good point here with the 4 games in a row that are going to test not just Rattler, but this entire OU team the most on their schedule, with Kansas State, Texas Christian, Iowa State, and Texas all being played, right, within the first 5 weeks of the season, if I have that correct? I got to look this up.
Make sure. Man.
Are you okay.
They got a break between Texas and TCU. They'll have the bye week there.
Okay, so I put TCU.
But then they have TCU and Texas Tech on the road.
That's right. Okay, so I put TCU in front of. Okay. What I woke up to this morning, and because I'm a college football junkie and I'm a sports nerd, I subscribe to a number of newsletters that I read religiously, just because the way that we're able to do this job is not just the reporting, but by reading as much as we possibly can to formulate our own opinions and analysis. But Team Rankings has been pretty good about predicting, right? Them along with Bill Conley and his SP have been really great. And the newsletter I got this morning predicts Oklahoma going 8-2 with losses to Iowa State and Texas. And I wondered, okay, what is it about Iowa State? Because I've said that that's a trap game, but it's been a trap game because of how Oklahoma specifically has played Iowa State the last 3 years. I mean, you take the loss in 2017, right, to a really good Matt Campbell team that's got a quarterback that had no business throwing for over 300 yards in Charlie Kemp doing exactly that. Then the next year, they basically take Hakeem Butler and abuse you with him, but okay. And then in 2019, they had their best offensive year since 2002. They put up over 400 points for the first time since 2002 in a season. And then there's Brock Purdy, who ascended. He took the leap, right? He took the jump, as we say, throwing for 3,982 yards, just 18 yards shy of a 4,000-yard passing season. In addition to, he made the wrong read on the 2-point conversion play, because if he throws to another tight end and not the one he threw to, we're not talking about Parnell Motley breaking it up and turning it into, it's not a pick because it's 2-point conversion, but we're talking about Iowa State beating Oklahoma in Norman, a la the 2018 season where Oklahoma State nearly beat Oklahoma in Norman on a failed, what would have been game-winning play in the end zone. So of these 4 games, Kansas State, Iowa State, Texas, and Texas Christian, are you the most terrified of Iowa State, or is it one of those other 3 teams?
For me, it would be Iowa State off the jump, because I think to say that Texas is the biggest threat is kind of a crutch take, in my opinion. Throw everything out when it comes to that football game, right? But for me, my take has been, okay, you mentioned some of the ups and downs when it comes to facing the Iowa State Cyclones. But, I mean, when you really look at it, they lost to Kemp at home. They struggled with Zeb Nolan running the offense for Iowa State back in Ames. And then, obviously, Purdy was right there, but he was on the road, and he was still fairly young. My take has been, okay, you're going on the road to Ames for the first time in a while, and last time that Oklahoma did, it was not pretty. You are seeing Brock Purdy in his first upperclassman season with some incredible talent around him. I mean, Breece Hall, Tariq Milton, Charlie Collard, the list goes on and on. Like, this guy has weapons. He's more comfortable. He's seasoned a little bit. And I think the defense for Iowa State coming back also has some guys. I mean, Jaquan Bailey is always very underrated. He's back. Greg Eisworth, I think, is back as well. So bottom line here, Iowa State is getting Oklahoma just 3 weeks at home with a young quarterback over there, and they're probably going to be facing Oklahoma in still that suspension window. So not only is Oklahoma going to be missing, obviously, Kennedy Brooks or some of those other guys who have left the program like CeeDee Lamb, Kenneth Murray, whatever, but they're also going to be facing Oklahoma potentially without Ronnie Perkins, Ramondre Stevenson, Trajan Bridges, guys who figure to play some pivotal roles on this squad. If that is the case, especially if Iowa State is able to allow more fans at that point in the year, I would probably smash the upset button. I mean, I think Iowa State's in a great position to capitalize on some early miscues by the Sooners. Because let's be honest, I mean, this is a younger squad, and I think we've both had the take that, okay, there's a chance for some real parity here in the Big 12 Conference, and maybe that's the first domino that falls when Oklahoma travels to Ames, Iowa. I'm not telling you right now, hey, the Cyclones are going to absolutely get Oklahoma, because I want to see what the two can put together on the field. But for me, I would be absolutely the most concerned with Iowa State at home with their extremely talented quarterback heading into his upperclassman season with some talent around him, facing an Oklahoma team that may be down a few men and still learning its identity. I think it's a fascinating storyline to follow. And to be quite honest with you, even if Iowa State doesn't get them, I mean, that's an absolute gauntlet, because then you got Texas right after that, obviously. That week, TCU and Texas Tech on the – don't sleep on that as well, because, I mean, if they get Alan Bowman back healthy, Bowman had OU on the ropes last time the Sooners traveled to Lubbock. So Iowa State could either absolutely upset the Sooners in that position, or they could at least trigger a little bit of scare moving forward the rest of the season.
I'm going to pick Texas Christian, right? Because Texas, like you said, it's an easy pick. It'll probably be a pick that's made by dudes that don't actually talk about the Big 12 very much and don't actually know much about the Big 12, which is fine. And if we're talking about teams that are on the way up, you can look at everybody but Kansas and West Virginia and make a pick and make a really great argument for how that team could beat Oklahoma, even as Lincoln Riley's got 5 rings on one hand for the last 5 years. That said, I look at Texas Christian, and I see Trevor Moehrig. I see Garrett Wallow. Marcel Brooks is in practice, if not cleared to play or getting the waiver to play, and it seems like only these quarterbacks are getting these waivers to play. And then you know about J.D. Spielman. You've been very high on that as a dude that they got. They got Tay Barber, and they got Zach Evans back there. And that game is in Amon G. Carter. Like, that game's in Fort Worth. Now, we'll see what the fan turnout is like, but being able to not have to travel, or I should say, not having to travel, is a big deal, even if you are Texas Christian. And I just love Gary Patterson's defense. Like, I just love how they deploy that third safety. I just love that they can get after people with 4 down linemen. And they always give Oklahoma a problem. Like, Jalen Hurts is a Heisman finalist and was second in the voting last year with 3,800 yards through the air and nearly 1,300 on the ground. And he played the worst game against Texas Christian at home, based entirely on the looks that they were able to present to him and how good they were at getting past his offensive line, which was a finalist for the Joe Moore Award. I think that Iowa State just doesn't have enough talent, even as you name-checked a bunch of dudes that I feel like have been playing there for 10 years, like Greg Eisworth and Jaquan Bailey, right? And Mike Rose. I mean, good God. But also, you know, Breece Hall is going to be a great tailback in this league if he hasn't already supplanted himself as that dude. And I like John Haycock's defense, but, like, outside of Charlie Kolar, he's your only superstar on that team. He's an All-American, right? Preseason All-American according to the AP. All I know is Texas Christian continues to put dudes in front of us that get drafted in the first round. They continue to over-recruit these dudes that, I should say, are under-recruited by others. And one of the things that I was put on game with, and I hadn't thought enough about this, Texas Christian identifies talent that is undertrained and undernourished. Because you'll remember L.J. Collier coming out of West Texas. His best offer before Texas Christian was Texas Tech, and I think they wanted to play like the offensive side of the ball. Gary Patterson looked at him and said, he's a defensive end. And he put on 40 pounds, and he got faster, and he got in front of a training table, and he could go. Ross Blacklock comes back from injury. He's a, day 2 pick. We had not talked word one really well about Jalen Reagor, and he's off the board in the first round. And we continue to look at the cornerbacks that he puts out. Guys like Nico Collins and Trevor Moehrig and even Jason Verrett back in the day. Those dudes could play. So I'm circling a Texas Christian game, especially if Oklahoma is undefeated, because then they'll be feeling pretty good about themselves, and Rattler might not know what it means to be this good this early. So that's the one that I would be paying the most attention to.